What drives a woman to become one of America's most notorious serial killers? This is the haunting question that surrounds the enigma of Aileen Wuornos, a woman whose life and crimes have captured the world's attention for over 3 decades. Wuornos' story begins in the shadows, marked by a childhood marred by abandonment, abuse, and a desperate struggle for survival. These early years would lay the groundwork for a life that spiraled into darkness, leading her onto the desolate highways of Florida, where she would become a harbinger of death. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos murdered 7 men, a chilling crime spree that sent shockwaves through the nation. Each victim was a middle-aged man, lured to their fate under the guise of a roadside transaction. Their bodies were found along the sun-drenched highways, a grim testament to Wuornos' deadly deeds. Her crimes were shocking, but it was the subsequent media and legal storm that truly catapulted Wuornos into the annals of American crime history. As the story unfolded, the public was captivated by the image of a female serial killer, a figure that seemed to defy the traditional narratives of crime and gender. Yet behind the headlines and the horror, Wuornos was a complex character. Her life was a tumultuous tapestry of trials and tribulations, each thread weaving a tale of a woman pushed to the brink. From the courtroom to the execution chamber, her journey was a tragic testament to a life lived on society's fringes. But what is the legacy of Aileen Wuornos? How do we reconcile the woman with the monster, the victim with the villain? In the years since her execution, these questions have sparked fierce debates, challenging our perceptions of crime, punishment, and the very nature of evil itself. Join us as we delve into the life of Aileen Wuornos, the woman behind the headlines. As we peel back the layers of her story, we invite you to journey with us into the heart of darkness, where we will confront the chilling reality of one woman's descent into infamy. Aileen Wuornos' story begins in a troubled home, far from the Florida highways where she would make her deadly mark. Born in the heartland of Michigan in the late 1950s, Aileen's life was marred by hardship from the start. Her father, a convicted child molester, never part of her life. Her mother, overwhelmed and unable to cope, abandoned Aileen and her older brother when they were just toddlers. Raised by their grandparents, Aileen's childhood was far from idyllic. Her grandfather, a heavy drinker with a volatile temper, subjected her to physical and emotional abuse. At school, Aileen struggled academically and socially, frequently clashing with teachers and peers. Early signs of mental distress began to surface. Bouts of anger, impulsivity, and trouble with authority. By her early teens, Aileen was a runaway, escaping the turmoil at home only to find a harsh world awaiting her. Homeless and desperate, she resorted to sex work for survival, a decision that would cast a long shadow over the rest of her life. These early experiences provided a bleak backdrop to Aileen's formative years. Psychologists suggest that this period of her life was instrumental in shaping the woman she would become. The constant exposure to violence, the absence of a loving family, the struggle to survive on the streets, all these factors likely played a role in her psychological development. But Aileen's story doesn't end here. This troubled child, with a life marked by abuse and neglect, would go on to become one of America's most notorious female killers. But how did this troubled child become a ruthless killer? That's the question we'll attempt to answer as we delve deeper into the life and crimes of Aileen Wuornos. The year was 1989, and along the highways of Florida, a predator was emerging. Aileen Wuornos, a woman with a troubled past and a turbulent present, was spiraling towards a chilling future. Her life, marked by hardship and struggle, was about to take a turn that would etch her name into the annals of crime history. Her first victim was Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. On a fateful day in December, their paths crossed, marking the beginning of a deadly spree. Mallory's life was brutally cut short, his body found riddled with bullets. Wuornos' life, on the other hand, was about to be irrevocably altered as she crossed the line from survival to murder. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act of desperation. It was a calculated and chilling act of violence. Wuornos was no longer just a woman trying to survive on the fringes of society. She had stepped into the realm of the predator. But what drove her to such extreme actions? Was it the culmination of years of abuse and neglect? Was it the result of her mental health issues, exacerbated by a life of hardship? Or was it, as some suggest, simply a cold-blooded decision to kill for personal gain? The truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere in the murky depths of human nature and individual circumstance. In the years to come, as the body count increased and the net began to close around her, Wuornos would become a figure of fear and fascination. The media would dub her the damsel of death, a moniker that captured the paradox of her existence. A woman driven to deadly violence in a world that had, in many ways, failed her. As we delve deeper into her story, it's crucial to remember that Wuornos was not born a killer. She was shaped into one by a confluence of factors, some beyond her control, others a result of her own choices. Understanding these factors is key to understanding the enigma that is Aileen Wuornos. This was just the beginning of a deadly spree that would shock the nation. Captured and standing trial, Aileen Wuornos became a media sensation. The courtroom was a battleground, a stage set for a tale of murder and survival, a play where Wuornos was both the villain and the victim. The prosecution's case was built on a chilling narrative. Wuornos, they argued, was a cold-blooded killer who preyed on unsuspecting men. They painted a picture of a woman who used her sexuality as bait, luring her victims with the promise of intimacy, only to rob them of their lives. The evidence was damning: ballistic reports, testimonies from witnesses, and most crucially, Wuornos's own confession, procured with the help of her former lover, Tyria Moore. The defense, on the other hand, had a mountain to climb. They contended that Wuornos's actions were not those of a cold-blooded killer, but of a woman pushed to the brink. They pointed to her troubled past, her struggles with mental health, and her desperate circumstances. As the trial unfolded, Wuornos was thrust into the limelight. The media descended on the courthouse, their lenses trained on the woman at the center of the storm. Wuornos, with her wild hair and wilder stories, was a figure made for the headlines. And then, the verdict. Guilty on all counts, Wuornos was sentenced to death, a verdict that would ignite a new debate. Was justice served, or was another victim claimed by a system that often overlooks the marginalized? But that's a story for another day. For now, let's say this: the trial of Aileen Wuornos was, without a doubt, the trial of the century. Executed in 2002, Aileen Wuornos left behind a legacy that continues to provoke discussion and debate. Her life and crimes have been the subject of countless documentaries, films, and books, with every portrayal attempting to dissect the woman behind the monstrous acts. Was she a cold-blooded killer, a victim of her circumstances, or a tragic figure driven to the edge by a society that had failed her at every turn? Her story challenges us to question our understanding of good and evil, forcing us to grapple with the gray areas that lie in between. It compels us to examine the conditions that can drive a person to commit such heinous acts, and whether our society and justice system are equipped to handle such complex cases. The portrayal of Wuornos in the media as the first female serial killer brought gender into the spotlight. Her case sparked debates about the representation of women in crime and whether they are judged by the same standards as men. It exposed the often ignored plight of sex workers and the violence they face on a daily basis. Her mental health struggles highlighted the deficiencies in our ability to effectively diagnose and treat mental illness within the criminal justice system. Beyond the headlines and sensationalism, Wuornos's legacy is a mirror held up to society, reflecting our collective prejudices, failures, and fears. It's a stark reminder of the need for criminal justice reform, for a system that does more than just punish, but also understands and rehabilitates. Her story also underscores the importance of compassion and understanding, even for those who commit the most unforgivable acts. It forces us to question whether we, as a society, have a responsibility to those who fall through the cracks, those who are neglected, abused, and forgotten. Aileen Wuornos' story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about society and the justice system. Who was the real Aileen Wuornos? Perhaps we'll never truly know.